recording the session, and also that we will send out the presentation to all our attendees afterwards. And as we've got a really wide audience out there from partner agencies, local housing authorities, some of our charity partners, corporate partners, fundraising partners, we thought it'd be a really good idea if you'd like to put your name and organisation into the chat box so that we can all welcome one another. We're planning also to answer any questions that you may have at the end of the session. So please feel free to put them into the question and answer box. This gives us a bit of thinking time, but if not, we're very happy to take them directly. So moving on. She said, bear with me a second, that's where we were. What we're looking to do for today's session, we're going to have a look at the impact of the pandemic, looking at that from a perspective of charities, perspective of Hertfordshire, Hertfordshire children, and the impact on youth homelessness. And then I'll hand over to our Director of Services, Sally Scott, who will talk about our different services, how we've adapted them. We've got some videos from our wonderful staff team as well that will talk about the work that they're doing on the ground. We'll look at the landscape for young people that are facing homelessness, challenges that we're facing, future projects, and then it's over to questions and answers. So just to get started, I'd like to share some data with you about the impact of COVID-19 on the charitable sector as a whole. There are 168,000 charities in England and Wales, of which there are 3,500 based here in Hertfordshire. And as with all areas across the economy, the charitable sector has been really heavily impacted by the pandemic. The predicted loss of £10 billion forecast for the year. And that's so unique that Charity Finance, which is one of our member bodies, called it a yawning multi-billion-pound hole in charities' finances. And that really comes as a result of the very, very challenging fundraising landscape which COVID has brought us into. And we can only see that being amplified as we move through the months over winter leading up to Christmas, which is always traditionally one of the charities' best times, not just for homeless charities, but all charities to be raising money. So moving on, loss of jobs, and also a fifth of charities are really worryingly considering cutting frontline services. But that comes in the face of over half the sector expecting an increase in demand for services. We'll talk a bit more about that later. So really, when you look at the the impact on the sector, the overall picture is one of trying to balance the rising demand with diminishing funding. And therefore, that means the resource as well. So moving on now to look at the impact of COVID-19 in Hertfordshire. My thanks here to the Hertfordshire Forward Conference, which was put together by Herts County Council, and also to the Hertfordshire Local Enterprise Partnership for this data. The Hertfordshire's economy output, for the accountants among you, that's the GVA, gross added value, is expected to shrink by nearly £5 billion this year. And that's taking it from about 45 down to 40. And that's actually the equivalent of the entire construction industry in Hertfordshire, to give it an aspect and a scale to that. And we're already seeing the results of this, as nearly, or just over 170,000 employments have been furloughed, and expected job losses and trebling of unemployment in Hertfordshire. And the impact on young people, as with many others, but on young people particularly, is immense, with many claiming benefits. They're not in education or employment. And really concerningly, 30% are digitally poor. They have no access to laptops and they have mixed digital skills, which they need to be able to access remote learning. So that's the impact in Hertfordshire as an economy. We look now at children's lives in Hertfordshire. This was a report put together by the Children's Society, released a couple of weeks ago. And I just want to highlight a few of the points that underpin some of the work that we do. one of the really concerning statistics is that despite Hertfordshire's image as being really affluent, a quarter of children are living in poverty, with nearly 600 households living in temporary accommodation. You have 930 children are in care in Hertfordshire, and over 5,000 have been identified as children in need. And just for those of you that might know what that means is, if you're a child in need, you are unlikely to achieve or maintain or have the opportunity of achieving and maintaining a reasonable standard of health or development without the provision of services by local authority. 5,000. And also, really alarmingly, nearly 30,000 children between the ages of 5 and 19 are estimated to have a mental health condition, and they're waiting up to 48 days to access services. So overall, for the most marginalised and deprived children in Hertfordshire, the impact of COVID has the potential to be life-altering and potentially absolutely devastating. So now if we move on to look at the impact on youth homelessness, the pandemic has really undermined many of the safeguards for a group that have been at high risk of homelessness in later life. Crisis of inequality and homelessness that young people are facing is very well documented, and the fallout of COVID has made that emergency even more severe, exacerbating the needs, the vulnerabilities, and the disadvantages young people already faced, increasing their risk of homelessness, both now and in the future. And young people have very distinct experiences of and ways into homelessness, which have shaped their vulnerabilities during the crisis. They are frequently in hidden homeless situations, meaning they're not on the statistics. They are staying with either friends, acquaintances, or even more worryingly, total strangers. And the lockdown measures that we've seen and are about to see, we've seen many of these arrangements break down, coupled with the breakdown of jobs and income. And indeed, with the new restriction happening from 1 minute past 12 tomorrow, sofa surfing will now be illegal. So with the erosion of many of the supports and the barriers of affordable accommodation and hostel spaces, many are not able to get the help they need. And one of the things that you're going to hear later is the key drivers that we see of youth homelessness is family breakdown and tensions. One of the key things we see all the time. And in particular, over the last few months, we've seen particular issues for LGBTQ young people that are living within very tense families, and they're feeling isolated within hostile families. We've seen problems with people with mental health. We will talk about that more, and those living in abusive households. And as a direct result of that, the calls to national helplines have doubled. That's the youth homelessness telephone line. And we've actually seen a similar rise in that in our own 18 plus advice line. And finally, as I mentioned earlier, with young people, they are 3 times more likely to be insecurely employed, twice as likely to be furloughed, and facing unequal access to welfare and, as we heard earlier, digital support. So it's highly likely that a new cohort of young people will be made homeless as a result of the financial pressures made worse by the pandemic. So I'd like now to have a look at the role and work of HYH during this time. And just before I hand over to Sally Scott, who's our Director of Services, I just wanted to highlight the strategic focus as a charity working in the homeless sector. I'm not going to talk through all of this. I just want to pull out the fact is that our vision as a charity is to prevent Hertfordshire's homelessness together. And I think it's really important that that shows the highlighting the importance and value that Herts Young Homeless as a charity place on our working relationships with the council, Herts County Council, the LHAs, partner agencies, other local charities. We're all about partnership. So whilst we work across all areas of the homeless pathway, we have 3 priority areas, which is from the very early start of the pathway, which is prevention and early intervention, then crisis intervention and independent living support. And in order to tell you a little bit more about each of those areas, I would be delighted to hand you over to Sally, Director of Services for HYH. So could you just excuse me, because I'm going to exit right and Sally's going to exit socially distanced left. I'll be there in a minute.
Thank you, Helen. Good afternoon to you all. Thank you very much for coming. I know that Helen's already mentioned about some technical issues. I have some videos in my section, which I'm really hoping are going to go without a hitch, but I'm going to apologise in advance just in case they don't. And moving on to our next slide. So this is just an overview of our services. Some of you will know these services really, really well, and others not so much. I've worked for Herts Young Homeless for over 10 years and could talk about these services all day for a very long time. However, for the purposes of today, I'm going to just pick out a few highlights. What I would like to say is that throughout all of our services, regardless of which point any young person enters and travels through them, our emphasis has always been about prevention and early intervention. And wherever possible, we would like to prevent someone from becoming homeless. In addition to that, many of the work that we carry out is centred around our partnership working. We consider this to be a key element, and it's only by working together that we can get the best outcomes for our young people and their families. So with our education service starting right at the beginning of our pathway, we deliver sessions around homelessness to raise awareness and to support young people to know where to go should they become homeless or have an issue with their housing situation. But in addition to that, our team also look to develop sessions that are particularly focused around young people and the struggles that they are having today, such as things like healthy relationships. And we also do sessions on resolving conflict, because we feel that this is paramount for our young people in terms of managing conflicts at home and within peers. And these sessions are available as necessary. Just moving along, we have our mediation service, and I'd just like to make particular reference to our under 16s mediation. This is currently funded by Henry Smith. This service is invaluable to us. Again, it's very early intervention focused, and actually what we've found is that people who access this mediation service at this point, only 10% of those actually go on to access our homeless hub and other services within Herts Young Homeless, which really demonstrates the impact of getting in there very, very early. This service is invaluable, and as ever with funding demands, the need for the service is far outweighed by the funding that we have for this particular service. We have our homeless hub and our floating support service, which are commissioned by Herts County Council Children's Services, and other services centred around those are really services that throughout our main contracts we have identified gaps. So we've identified areas that aren't being supported and gaps in the support that we are able to provide for our families. So we have gone out for independent funding, and it might just be one or two people carrying out those roles to support our larger contracts and make sure that we can provide a more holistic whole approach to the support that we give. We have our floating support and our intensive outreach worker post, which is new and was about to launch just as the first lockdown came about. So we've had a few false starts with that one, but I'm happy to say that we have launched it, not in its original specification just for now, but it is now supporting our floating support team with the many care leavers that we have coming through, who are particularly hard to reach, hard to engage, and most at risk of rough sleeping. And then you'll just notice at the end of the pathway, we have our amazing Live Life service. This is for young people that have experienced homelessness, and it gives them the opportunity to have a voice and to offer us input on what we need to be looking to develop over the years that come, and kind of the areas that we need to look at to support them in the best way that we know how. Moving along. These are some of our lovely staff that deliver our amazing services. In terms of the impact at the moment, so well, I mean, just to point out a couple of things, 97% of those using our under 16 service said that they have better family relationships, and increased self-esteem and confidence, which is amazing. I suppose a note to point out is that our advice line, we had 665 calls, which is for 18 plus young people who I suppose wouldn't be considered to be particularly priority need cases, but this demonstrates that there's still a massive need for support for this age group. And then our homeless hub prevented 96% of young people from making a homeless application, and 76% of our Live Life members reported that they had improved confidence and self-esteem. So that's just an overview of some of the work that our services are achieving with our families and young people. In terms of how we've adapted our services, it's been a very interesting time. We have gone to remote working at the speed of light, thanks to Kirsty, who is our IT support, and if we didn't have, we just wouldn't be able to manage any of it. So thank you very much, Kirsty. Our staff are going to tell you a little bit more about this, but we have obviously increased the frequency of the support for our service users via telephone and video, and where, as Helen's mentioned, a lot of our young people don't really have the technology to support us to be able to do that. So where we've been able to, we have supported them with the technology so that they can access what we're offering them. Obviously, we've seen a rise in the need for food and supermarket vouchers, so we've increased this. Our corporate partners have been amazing in helping us with this element, and we are delivering food parcels and vouchers to any family or young person we're supporting that needs it. In terms of our Live Life, we obviously, a large part of the thing that they really felt that they benefited from was the face-to-face Live Life meetings that they had on a monthly basis at different venues around the county. So we've had to really think about how we can continue to keep them connected with each other. And we've been providing virtual meetings on a weekly basis. Our mediators, obviously we've got lots of families that are now in very intense, tense situations at home for prolonged periods of time with a lot more pressure because they're not able to go out and about so freely. So our mediators have been sharing tools and tips that they have on how to manage conflict within those situations. Obviously, our education team have been unable to go out into schools until this term. So they've been developing online learning packs so that they can help the schools continue to deliver that programme of education. And as ever, we continue to work in really close collaboration with our partners and funders, as this is key with the rising needs of all our service users and how we're going to meet the demand for that. And this is just an example of the mediation Instagram that we put out for our families and on our Facebook page, just to kind of help them with the conflict resolution that they might be facing. So obviously, in terms of the landscape of the young people, as we've mentioned, there's been a huge increase in the complexity of our cases just because of the pressure. It's a bit like a pressure cooker, so it just keeps building up and it just keeps layering. And as the longer it goes on, the worse that gets for our young people. A lot of people who are in tenancies who potentially would have been at risk of eviction prior to lockdown, that's now being held, but at some point that will be lifted. And obviously that has a lot of, that will have a big knock-on impact for many of our service users. It's time consuming, obviously, when we want to carry out our health and safety for our face-to-face visits. We have to put a lot more control measures in place to keep our staff and our young people safe. We have a lack of employment opportunities. There's massive benefit delays. So a lot of our young people are entitled to claim the benefit, but there's a really big delay, firstly in being able to get through and make the application, but also in actually getting the money through. As we've said, there's increased pressure on families and there is a deterioration of general mental health and well-being for lots of our service users and families. And now to tell you much more about this is our amazing staff team. So I've just got a couple of videos to show you, hopefully, if it all goes well.
Hi, I'm Vicky and I am a hub and an advice and information worker. I work within a small team and we support 16 and 17-year-olds. Our role is to promote family work. created, so we were unable to move people in. Luckily, this has now picked up and spaces are becoming available, but as you can imagine, there are people that have gone onto the waiting list that have now taken their hostel spaces. So
Just to say, apparently we haven't shared our audio, so I'm not sure any of you can hear that. So give us 1 minute.
I'm just going to replay this now. Take two. Well.
hi, I'm Vicky and I am a hub and an advice and information worker. I work within a small team and we support 16 and 17-year-olds. Our role is to promote family work and supporting young people to get back home. And where that's not possible, we need to ensure they have safe, secure and appropriate accommodation. The hub has been experiencing a range of challenges recently and our cases are growing ever more complex. COVID has impacted families significantly. As a result of this, the hub has been consistently busy. We've noticed that we've been working with our cases for a much longer period of time than we previously would have. And this is due to, one, the complexity of the cases, but also the issues that COVID has caused in accessing hostel spaces. So an example of why this has been challenging for us is that in the beginning of lockdown, hostels were not evicting. There were no positive move-ons, therefore spaces were not being created, so we were unable to move people in. Luckily, this has now picked up and spaces are becoming available. But as you can imagine, there are people that have gone onto the waiting list that have now taken them hostel spaces. So it's becoming difficult to now place young people who are in emergency accommodation. A large portion of the young people that we support have got mental health and substance misuse issues, with the majority of them not accessing any sort of support for this. Family conflicts can worsen these conditions, and lockdown has only increased family conflict. This may be where families are stuck in with each other and they're not getting the support that they need. This also could be where young people are not abiding by lockdown. They might be going out and putting families at risk, and this can also cause conflict within a family unit. The hub is seeing more people coming through on or around their 16th birthday. We've also noticed an increase of young people who have been fleeing violence, and a lot of the time this is gang violence, from outside areas who are now residing in Hertfordshire. We're noticing young people even more who are involved in gangs. This is why it's really, really important that we work closely with our partner agencies to ensure that we get the best outcomes for these young people.
Hi, I'm Becca Froggatt. I'm the Outreach Services Manager for Herts Young Homeless. For those of you that aren't aware, the services that come under the Outreach umbrella include the Floating Support Service, the 18 Plus Advice Line, the Intensive Outreach Service, the Tenancy Sustainment Service, and it also includes the work that we do in partnership with New Hope Trust, supporting those rough sleepers in the Watford area. As for you, the COVID-19 epidemic has had an impact in all areas of the organisation, and we've been working really hard to try and adapt to the challenges that it's brought our way without impacting on the quality of service that we provide, the outcomes that we achieve for our young people, but also the morale of our staff. I have to say the staff have been absolutely amazing. How they've dealt with every challenge that's been sent their way has been unbelievable, and their dedication and commitment and passion to the roles and the services that they work for has just been phenomenal, and we cannot thank them enough for that. We're so proud of them. To give you some examples of the impacts that we've seen, this includes an influx of referrals into the Floating Support Service, resulting in a waiting list. This doesn't even include evictions. So once young people start being evicted again from their accommodation, we're anticipating another influx of referrals then. The intensive outreach service, initially when lockdown first happened, was in its pilot stage, and due to that we put the service on hold. Those workers were then used in other services that were more busier. Now the service has started up again, albeit at not the original spec that we had planned. Initially, they're supporting partners with dealing with some of the fallout of the epidemic. Then we're hoping that the service will resume to its original state very soon. And also our young people. These are young people that are already dealing with a lot of crisis in their lives, have a lot of problems and issues that they're trying to deal with. And this is just something else, another added problem added to that. To support them with this, initially in lockdown, we provided them with a lot more telephone support, talking to them about the epidemic, the lockdown rules and what this would mean for them. What's also helped to support these young people during this difficult time is the generous donations that we've received. Initially, staff were going out, giving out food parcels to those most vulnerable who were self-isolating and couldn't get out and about themselves. And we've also had the added value of the vouchers scheme, where we've been able to give out vouchers for grocery stores, which has just been an essential, again, supporting those vulnerable people. We can't thank you enough for that help. If there's anything else you need to know, please don't hesitate to contact me. Otherwise, thank you for your time. Hi, I'm Becca Froggatt.
Hi everyone, my name's Holly and I am an intensive outreach worker for Herts Young Homeless. Keep watching this video to find out how we as an organisation are continuing to support our young people during this pandemic. Thank you and enjoy.
Just to say, obviously, for those of you who know us will know that we consider our staff to be our greatest asset at Herts Young Homeless. So thank you to the staff that did the videos for us, but also thank you to each and every one of you for helping us continue to deliver our invaluable services in such a pressurised time. The next slide, we're just going to talk about, she says, hopefully, but that's not her.
Hi everyone.
Slight technical hitch. This is just Megan's story. Megan is one of our Live Life members. Our fundraising and marketing team have been working really hard to think of different ways for us to get our message out there. And this is just one example of how they are doing that. And I'm just going to pass you over to Megan to tell you a little bit more about her story.
Megan. I'm part of the Live Life group. I have experience of street homelessness and hostel homelessness, and now currently studying at university. I think given COVID, it's been quite hard on everyone, but it's definitely been very different. Staying on campus, that was only really my only resort, but obviously everyone else goes back home, so it's been quite strange. It's been quite isolating, I suppose it's the main word I would use. I definitely feel like there is a massive sort of strain on like mental health and stuff like that. Many people just find it hard to sort of cope with that sort of thing, but also I think financially as well, a lot of people got laid off and stuff like that, and it's been hard. So I know myself that I've had to ask for vouchers. Student loan can only stretch so far, and I know a few others as well that have had similar situations like that. Obviously when it started and lockdown was in March and stuff like that, I think everyone initially thought, oh, it'll only be like a month or so. As it goes on, you are isolated from a lot of people and things are so different, and also there is more fear surrounding a second wave and stuff like that. I went from having 3 jobs to having none. So that was quite hard. It has been hard to sort of stay focused and sort of stay engaged as well. People need that little bit more support. The impact is massive. We had loads of like fundraising things and events and stuff planned, and obviously they've had to be cancelled, and I feel like it's sort of shook the sort of like participation sort of thing and the aim of the project and stuff like that. It's been really hard to keep the project going and also attending, so obviously can't all meet up as we usually would, because it used to be so easy, just, you know, oh, everyone meet on this Friday or whatever in advance, but now it's like completely changed with the Zoom meetings and stuff like that, and trying to get everyone online and all together. I really like that, because, you know, you can all see each other still, even though it's different. I mean, it's still nice to know that you've got that sort of like sense of community and stuff there. I think that people should definitely not be so quick to judge other people's circumstances. Anyone, and I will repeat it until I'm blue in the face, that anyone can find themselves homeless at any given time, and it's a circumstantial thing. I think that given everything right now being so uncertain, I think that there needs to be more support for those that have, obviously, myself, but also others included. Everything's always been quite uncertain. So now you throw a pandemic in the mix, it's not great. You feel like you're walking on sand and you just can't seem to find your balance. I think there needs to be more support for those people as well.
Thank you to Megan for sharing that. I think it's very hard to share your story, and I would like to say thank you to all our Live Life members, as obviously they are paramount in helping us get our message out there and help our different services do that. So thank you.
Megan, I'm part of the Live Life.
There we go. So at this point, I'm going to pass you back to Helen. So I'm going to exit right. Helen will enter left. Thank you very much.
Hello again. So we're coming towards the end of our webinar now, and we just want to look at some of the future challenges that we see as a charity, and then balance that out with some positive news about opportunities that we're currently working on. So looking at the challenges, I think if I refer back to an earlier slide that I discussed, I think we see all charities are needing to balance the rising demand for their services with the medium to long-term diminishing funding. And we fully expect an increase in demand for our services, really a surge as we move through the second lockdown, pandemic, and also the winter months. We, as Sally alluded to, we are spending longer with our young people, partly because of the difference of offering something online as opposed to face-to-face. But we also, it's really important at this time with the challenges that they're facing that we look to build really meaningful contact and trusting relationships with them, and able to support them with the information they're looking for, particularly around entitlements and how to access them. We maintain an absolutely huge list of partners of agencies that we will triage, a very posh word, our service users across. We will do the prevention work and the homeless part of it, the independent living support, the crisis work, but we want to be sure that they've got everything they need. So it ensures by triaging out to partner agencies, we're able to identify the individual needs of our service users and signpost and refer them. So it means that we're working holistically with them. Financial shortfall. One of the recent reports said that charities, I talked about that earlier, but the loss of income that's anticipated at the last financial crisis, there was a lag of about 18 months before the full impact was felt within charities. And I think that's probably going to be very much largely the same here, particularly because there's been a lot of fantastic opportunities for grant funding and emergency funding from the government that charities have been able to access, but that will only sort of hold it for so long. But we'd like to say thank you to our grant funders for supporting us and being very flexible at this time, where we've had a project where we've had plans and we've not been able to deliver it in the way. They've been incredibly flexible with how we define our outcomes and move forward. So a big thank you. Our fundraising income, which we expect to be really impacted, supports our core costs. It's nothing sounding very sexy, but in order to run services for a charity, you have to have an HR and an IT and the creaky server, and everyone has to have a wonderful Kirsty supporting us as well. So really the biggest area of our costs, as I'm sure for many charities, is in our staff. And that leaves very little left over for things like IT and digital. We do what we can, but it's, you know, in order to keep ahead of the game, and also with us looking to increase our online presence, and the fact that we've had to redefine our service offering, it's obviously that we're going to need to increase our digital capacity. We need to train our staff, we need to train our volunteers, we need to take our remote server and, I was about to say throw it away, but we need to move to something like SharePoint that's all in the cloud, and that means there's not 40 of us all fighting for space remotely across Hertfordshire. That these are all things, and embrace ourselves with a digital strategy that means that we're fit for purpose as we go forward. Moving to remote working and working in the pandemic, as I'm sure for all of you that are here today, has presented so many challenges. And I just think it's important that we recognise as a charity that we have to work hard on looking after our staff, as Sally said, supporting their well-being and doing whatever we can to make sure that they are happy and healthy and safe, and they can continue to deliver the services that we do. So those are some of the many challenges that we face, but she says, to end on a positive in terms of challenges, and just in recognising this, which is Trustee Week, I'm sure many of you all know that, we have a really strong and committed Board of Trustees, led by our chairman, Peter Holland. They give their time, they give their expertise, they give their knowledge, a listening ear at many a point, but they do all of that to make sure that our charity is robust, it's sustainable, and it's able to continue to provide the vital services that we do across Hertfordshire. So I'm exiting right and handing back now to Sally, who'll be telling you a little bit of the opportunities, and then we're going to move on to question and answers.
Thank you, Helen. So yeah, we're just going to share a couple of opportunities that we've got coming up that we're quite excited about. So the first one that we have is that we've been able to refocus some of our funding with HPFT and adult commissioning, so that we are developing and providing 2 mental health outreach workers in conjunction with Broxbourne Borough Council and also Hertsmere Borough Council. The idea of these workers is that they are going to support young people and families in the community with mental health and substance misuse issues where their tenancy may be at risk as a result of that. These families are quite hard to reach. They don't necessarily engage in services, so one of the main elements of that role initially will be to actually get them on board and get them engaging so that we can assess what needs they have and make sure that they can access the support that they need and consequently don't get evicted from their tenancies. So that's the first one. The second one is that we already have our Live Life service, but we have had the opportunity to review how that's been going over the last couple of years, and we're coming up to a new funding period for that. And in that, we wanted to add a few different sections in. So we're going to make our 16 and 17-year-old element of that service more robust so that we can offer a better provision to the young homeless young people that we've worked with. We have recognised that in order to support mental health, self-confidence, skills, well-being and self-esteem, we would also like to include an annual residential. So that's something that we're putting in. And then probably the greatest part of the development is that we've recognised that within our Live Life members, we have a great expert panel who are experts because of the experiences that they've had. And we would like the opportunity to develop that further so that they could volunteer for us as a charity and help our current teams deliver the message to new young people coming through our services. We often find that that there's no better person to give the message than someone who's had that experience themselves. So where we're struggling to engage a young person, it might be that we have a Live Life member that is happy to come out and share their story and their experiences. And hopefully this will help the young people that we have coming through. Just to say, we are obviously looking for funding for that. So if that's something you think you can help us with, we'd love to hear from you. And then last but definitely not least, we're really excited about our first accommodation project that we are going to be launching in partnership with Welwyn and Hatfield Council. This is going to be a home in the community for 5 young people, primarily those who are moving on from supported accommodation. And the idea is that we will provide them with a safe, secure environment where we can offer them a nurturing, caring environment so that they can learn the next set of skills they need for their independent living. It will include a live-in support worker, which I think is going to be quite key for this particular project. And it will allow them to help and support the individual needs of those young people living in there. So that's something that we're hoping that we're going to have coming from about March next year. And obviously we'll keep you posted on that one. If you have any questions about any of those or anything that we've talked about today, then obviously you can feel free to contact myself or Helen. We'd be happy to help you. And then I believe we're going to move on to question and answers, which I think Caroline is going to help us for if we've had any questions coming in, Caroline.
Hi there. Well, there's nothing come in just yet, but I was going to ask Sally if you'd like to expand a bit more on the accommodation project and perhaps to talk about what that model is based on.
Yes, the model is based on one that already exists in a London borough called Walmead House, and that's done in conjunction with New Horizon. And they have a day centre, and they identified young people who came through the day centre that needed somewhere to live, over 18, not in priority need, and really could do with a different kind of environment to help them build on their independent living skills. So it's very much based around that. And we're hoping to model that project here. And our aim actually for the LHAs that are here is that once we've got that down and we know and we've kind of experienced and worked our way through that, if it's successful, although it's a very slow burn in terms of a project, it chips away and definitely changes someone's journey so that they don't repeat the pattern in the future. We would like to roll that out in other areas as well. Any other questions?
Great, thank you, Sally. Nothing's come in on Q&A on the chat yet, but I do encourage anyone, if you have got a question, please pop it into the chat box. In the
Or ask us.
Yeah. I was just going to ask you about the second lockdowns, Sally, and how you feel that might affect service users of Herts Young Homeless, and in particular about the Everyone In scheme, whether we think that's going to be happening again.
Yeah, I mean, we have been in contact with our partners with regards to the Everyone In scheme. We have actually spoken to them about that, and a lot of people that we were encouraged to get everyone in for last time is still in some form of accommodation. So obviously the aim for this time round is that we make sure that we can maintain that. So I don't think we'll be entrenching our workers in the travel lodge like we did before, but obviously the key aim is that we will continue to try and accommodate those who need it, work with the existing local housing authorities about how we can do that, and also our outreach worker for rough sleepers, along with New Hope, CLG and Citizens of Advice, will continue to go out and visit and identify anyone that needs that support.
Great, thanks, Sally. I've got a question in from Simon Bidgood. Is the new accommodation for young adults with additional needs?
Sorry, can you say that again, Caroline?
Is the new accommodation for young adults with additional needs?
The new accommodation is for low needs young people. So yes, because it's in the community, we've not done it before. Obviously, we are largely going to be accepting people into that project that we know already. So we will be working with our supported accommodation providers to identify the best young people to go into that house and make a success of that. So it's for low needs, it's not for our high needs young people that we often support. Thank you very much, Simon, for your question.
A question at this stage?
I'm going to pass you over to Helen just for some final words. Thank you very much, everyone.
So thank you very much for giving up your time to hear all about the work that we do and how we've adapted during the pandemic. Just want to take the opportunity, we've said it many times, but to thank our wonderful partner agencies, our statutory and charity partners, and our fundraisers, our corporate supporters, our community fundraisers, our Friends of group, all the people that will support us as we move through this time. There are two ways on here that if you feel like sleeping out at home in this lovely weather, you can do that. So there's details on the website. And we are also, as a charity, engaging in a project called The Big Give, which if you are able to donate between the 1st and 8th, will double your donation for free and for double the impact. So please feel free. We've said all the way through, if there's any questions or anything you'd like to ask or pick up on, we will be sending out the slides afterwards and the session will be recorded. There's all the contact details. And I just really wanted to end with a quote. It was from the House of Lords Select Committee in 2017, and I think it sums up the work that so many charities do, and particularly the way that we work too. It says that charities are the eyes, the ears, and the conscience of society. They mobilise, they provide, they inspire, they advocate, and they unite. A perfect example. Thank you all very much for coming.